I want to come back to something that we spoke about, or you spoke about early on with W. Clement Stone in his intake interview when
Yeah.
he asked you, do you take 100% responsibility for your life? And the reason I want to revisit that is that I grew up in a family where there was a lot of complaining. There was a lot of finger pointing, a lot of blaming, and the villain would change depending on the context. And I've I've worked very hard to try to correct that training for myself. And most of the time I would say I do pretty well, but there are certainly times when I seem to revert back to that early experience and find myself complaining about, maybe I don't complain, but I blame, right? Maybe it's just internally. Maybe I don't give voice to it, but there could be some blaming. How do you encourage people to take more or 100% responsibility? What are the steps for people who recognize that's what they want to do, but perhaps have the habits of blaming, pointing fingers, complaining?
Well, I'll start with a story. A couples therapist told me once. She was working with a couple and they were arguing about whose fault it was that something had happened. And the therapist said, "Well, I'm glad to see you agree on something." And they said, "What?" "Well, you obviously agree that if you could figure out whose fault it is, somehow that's going to make your life better."
That's really, actually,
Yeah.
that's outstanding. Yeah.
So basically, I teach a little formula equation, if you call it, like E plus R equals O. Event plus response equals outcome. So when there's an event and you blame somebody or something, the government, the bank, the economy, your mother, your sister, your neighbor, the boss, whatever you're blaming for this experience you've just had, that event plus your blaming does not produce a better outcome. So we all want a better outcome. We want to experience joy, freedom, peace, love, success, abundance, whatever the outcome that we want, health, longevity, whatever. And certain behaviors do not do that. So I've never found a place where blaming produced a better result. You don't feel better.
No.
And you don't solve the problem in a way that really gets you anywhere because you've just blamed somebody. And it's amazing how much our culture supports blaming and complaining. I used to call bars ain't it awful clubs. Every profession has their own bar they go to. The firemen go here, the police go there, the lawyers go there, the doctors go there, and they bitch and moan about everything that happened that day. Like, the economy, the president, the minister of the hospital, whatever. So the reality is it lets off steam and you get agreement, but you don't get resolution, you don't get breakthrough, you don't get better results. So if you look at E plus R equals O, there's only 3 responses you have any control over: your thoughts, your images, and your behavior. That's it. You can't manage time. You can manage your thoughts in relation to time. You can manage your visualizations in relation to time and your behavior. We think we can control things outside of us. We can only control our response to things outside of us and then notice what kind of outcome that produces. And what you've done magnificently, and what I've done a lot as well, is look at who are the people that are succeeding, what are their responses to certain events, how do they relate to this situation, which ones produce the better results. I mean, your book, the Titans book, is just amazing. All these people telling you what worked.
Thank you.
If you haven't read that, by the way, guys, please do. It's incredible. So what happens is blaming, we just discovered, we talked about it. And it's incredible what people blame. I mean, look at our president right now. He's blaming everybody for everything. It's unfortunate, but he does. But it's not producing particularly great results as a result of it. Complaining, in order to complain, you have to have a reference point of something better you prefer. So I can't complain about my girlfriend if I don't have an image of some woman who's better than my girlfriend, right? Now, the reality is that nobody ever complains about gravity.
Right.
You've never seen an old person walking through the mall all bent over going, "Gravity, I hate gravity. Wasn't for gravity, I would be all bent over. Gravity sucks." Never seen that. Why not? Because you can't change gravity. Everyone knows gravity just is. So we don't complain about it. So anything you're complaining about, you have to have a reference point in your mind of something better job, better country, better president, better whatever. And what happens then is when we become aware of that, we have this better option that we're not willing to risk creating. So therefore we complain about it. It lets off steam. It gets people to go together. Yeah, I know my wife's the same way, whatever it is, but we don't get a better result. So, I always say, imagine a situation where every woman in the world dies except my wife. Big, big, big thing comes down from outer space, zaps the earth with some energy field. My wife happens to be in a lead mine that day. She's the only one who survived. Would I come to work and complain about my wife? No. Why not? It's the only one. There is no option, right? So we wouldn't complain about it. Right? So basically, if you're complaining, then my response to that is, what would you prefer? What would you have to do to create that?
Mm-hmm.
One of my friends runs a workshop he does over in Europe. He's a European corporate consultant. And one of the questions he asks people, even when they're pissed off at the company they work for, he says, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your quality of life working here? And they go, 3. He go, why so high? Because it's not a 0. Something's going on there, right? So why so high? Which floors them. It kind of breaks the chain of their thought. And then he goes, so what would be an 8 for you? Never goes to 10 because that's too big a leap for people. He goes, what would be an 8 for you? Well, this would be happening. This would be happening. What could you do to help generate that result? What could you do to help make that happen in your company? Because that's really what you have to do. You can't just sit there and bitch and moan. Nothing's going to change.
Yeah. You mentioned Tools of Titans, and I wanted to just, not to push the book, but it brought to mind, because I put together these books mostly as reference books for myself. And Tools of Titans in particular was an example of not wanting to let learnings from these interviews fall through my fingers like sand through an hourglass. Mm-hmm. And one of the essays in that book is taken from Jocko Willink, who's a famous Navy SEAL commander. He's done a million things since. His first public interview ever was on this podcast ages ago. He has this, people can find videos of this too, but it's just called Good. And so if you'll indulge me for a second, I just want to read a second.
Sure.
Just a minute or two of this. So this Good, this is the title. And Jocko has a great video of this for people who want, but it's also in the book. So Good. This is something that one of my direct subordinates, one of the guys who worked for me, a guy who became one of my best friends, pointed out. He would pull me aside with some major problem or issue. This is when Jocko was in the military that was going on. And he'd say, boss, we've got this thing, this situation, it's going terribly wrong. I would look at him and say, good. And finally, one day, he was telling me about something that was going off the rails. And as soon as he finished explaining it to me, he said, I already know what you're going to say. And I asked, what am I going to say? He said, you're going to say good. He continued, that's what you always say. When something is going wrong or going bad, you look at me and say, good. And I said, well, I mean it because that's how I operate. So I explained to him that when things are going badly, there's going to be some good that will come for it. Oh, the mission got canceled? Good, we can focus on another one. Didn't get the new high-speed gear we wanted? Good, we can keep it simple. Didn't get promoted? Good, more time to get better. Didn't get funded? Good, we own more of the company. Didn't get the job you wanted? Good, go out, gain more experience, and build a better resume. Got injured? Good, need a break from training. It just goes on and on and on. And then he says, just to maybe put a pin in it, he says, now I don't mean to say something trite. I'm not trying to sound like Mr. Smiley positive guy. That guy ignores the hard truth. That guy thinks a positive attitude will solve problems. It won't, but neither will dwelling on the problem. No, accept reality, but focus on the solution. Take that issue, take that setback, take that problem and turn it into something good. Go forward. And if you're part of a team, that attitude will spread throughout. And I feel like you reflect that. And certainly Jocko is sort of an archetype of many types. And it's also, for me at least, makes it clear that it's something you train yourself to do, right? If it doesn't come naturally all the time, just like an exercise habit or anything else, like this is something that you have to condition yourself to do with reminders and practices. Are there any reminders or practices that you have for yourself to stay on the rails, so to speak, with the 100% responsibility?
Yeah, I guess so. I've always got something I'm working on, and you have to have like something that keeps it in your focus, Mm-hmm. So if I'm engaging in some kind of negative self-talk, then I take and I create an opposite affirmation. I'll put that on some Post-its and put it on the refrigerator door and on my bathroom mirror and stuff like that. Because we know it normally, you probably have other data than I do on this, but neuroscience tends to tell us that it takes about 66 days to change a belief. Mm-hmm. And it can take longer depending on who it is and how badly that belief is ground into you through the trauma of its creation. But generally, it requires repetition. There's a guy, I forget his name right now. He's the head of peak performance at West Point. He wrote a book about it. And one of the things when I read the book that he does is when the students are wanting a behavioral change, they create an affirmation and he teaches them every time you walk through a door, reach up and touch the door jamb and then say your affirmation. Now I have a repetitive system that's built in that tells me to do that. And you think about how many doors you go in and out of every day, into the bathroom, into the kitchen, out of the kitchen, into your car, back out of, whatever. And so it's that level of repetition until it becomes ground in. They don't have to repeat it.
Mhm.
I mean, I know my phone number. I don't have to repeat it. Well, I did when I first got it, and you want to get your new ideas like that. I always say if you can build in 4 new behavioral shifts a year, think about it, in 10 years, you got 40 new shifts. That's a lot.
Mhm.
For example, when we read what was the book? Shaman from Mexico.
It's Carlos Castaneda?
No, a different
No.
one.
Different shaman from Mexico.
Yeah, this is me being sharp at 81. Anyway, he had the 4 agreements. That's the guy, the book.
Oh, this is Don Miguel.
Don Miguel Ruiz. Yeah.
There we go.
So my wife and I decided we'll take the 4 agreements and we'll work on each agreement for 3 months. And so for 3 months, that was the agreement, of not making other people wrong, thinking positive, etc. And we had to reinforce that. And we had little signs that told us what to focus on and so forth. So I think it's important to do that because, as you know, we are so distracted today now with AI and scrolling through Instagram. And I mean, I even get caught in that occasionally. I'll go looking for something on YouTube, and the next thing I know, I'm watching old reruns of Jay Leno. It's like, but I think that, reminders are important.